Boyd Holbrook, who plays the Corinthian, absolutely, hands down, steals the show. Kristen here, and today we're talking about Netflix's brand new series, The Sandman. This is a series based on the iconic comic books by Neil Gaiman, and in the story there is another world that waits for us when we close our eyes and sleep, a place called the Dreaming, where the Sandman gives shape to all of our deepest fears and fantasies. But when Dream is unexpectedly captured and held prisoner for a century, his absence set off a series of events that will change both the dreaming and waking worlds forever. When he finally escapes, he's now on a journey through time, through different worlds, to fix the chaos that ensued in his absence. Based off my research, I would say that this series is based off of the first two trade paperbacks of Preludes and Nocturnes and The Doll's House. And I gotta say, there is just so much potential with The Sandman. I mean, watching these stories unfold, it's just so clear the vision that Neil Gaiman had and why these stories are so iconic. It's also clear why there have been so many failed attempts to adapt this project, because it is quite ambitious. There's so much material to work with that it can be difficult to balance all of the elements of the story, and because of that I think that Netflix's adaptation can be very uneven and inconsistent at times. I can't tell you how many times I thought, wow, this premise is so fascinating, these actors are phenomenal, I just wish they went further with the storytelling. There are some really strong performances in The Sandman. I think Tom Sturges, who plays Dream, really brings him to life very faithfully, but I do feel like there is a little bit of a disconnect. They tell us about how Dream was very merciless in his domain, and he's working on developing this newfound compassion for humanity throughout the season, but I feel like because they didn't really show you just how cruel he was initially, the journey of his change feels a bit artificial at times. Like, I wish that you could see a bigger difference in how his character has evolved by the end of the season. Boyd Holbrook, who plays the Corinthian, absolutely, hands down, steals the show. He's a nightmare created by Dream who's gone rogue, thus creating the modern-day serial killer. He delivers a captivating and charismatic performance as the Teeth for Eyes killer with such dynamic range. I loved his storyline, especially around the serial convention, which was just so over the top and funny despite it being creepy. Like, it sort of started giving me a little bit of Pushing Daisies vibes, and I just thought the changes they made around his character from the comics was really successful. I will say though, I thought it was a huge mistake to wrap up his story in this season, because he was the most compelling, not even just antagonist, but character of the entire show. And the standout episode had to be The Sound of Her Wings. They dive into these really deep topics of death and immortality that really make you think. We get to see Dream connect with his sister Death and discuss finding purpose and fulfillment in their duties. And I like the way that they made her job not this scary thing or something to fear, but like a chapter that comes next, like it's inevitable. She's not evil or a killer, she's kind of helping you and guiding you into the afterlife. And they do this great flashback to the 1300s where they grant a man immortality as sort of like this experiment to understand humanity more, and so Dream meets up with him every 100 years to kind of see how he's feeling. Does he still want to live? And I loved this premise, you know, throughout all the ups and downs. The character of Hobbs still wants to live, he still sees potential for the future. We get to see the passage of time through his eyes, see how technology's changed, see how the world has changed every 100 years. I thought that was just really fascinating. And so it was like, even though there was all these big drastic changes, you also sort of were grounded in this idea that like the bar they kept going to never changed, and their friendship grew, and I just really liked those parallels. I would say though the biggest disconnect in The Sandman was the way that the show was narratively structured. The first half of the season was about Dream being captured, escaping, and then setting out on this journey to collect all of his tools to fix everything in the world. And then the second half of the season was more centered around A Doll's House. It just felt like two completely different TV shows, and I have to say I liked the second half much better. I think it would have either made sense to have the whole journey that Dream goes on in the first half either be its own season or spread it out throughout the season more, while making the story of the Dollhouse more of an anthology style so that each episode is telling an individual story, diving more into it, exploring all of the different layers there, as well as moving Dream's arc forward. I thought they just brought up so many different storylines and characters and then didn't give them enough time to be developed. For instance, while Dream is captured in that first episode, a young girl named Unity Kincaid falls into this dreaming sickness. They don't really address this storyline again until the second half of the season, where we meet Rose Walker and find out that she's a dream vortex. Eventually we get the history that she's Unity's great-granddaughter, and it ends up being this huge important plot point. They tease that while she was asleep she was living this dream life because she was initially supposed to be the dream vortex, and things went wrong because Dream wasn't in his domain. But they don't actually show us what happened in Unity's dream world. I just think it would have been really fascinating to see more of that story from her perspective, and even tie it back to give us more background on Dream's siblings. This just felt like a really big missed opportunity. I mean, this is an adaptation, so I would have loved to be able to see even more, maybe even things that that they couldn't show us in the comics. So this could have been an opportunity to explore this story even deeper on screen. Like, imagine if we'd gotten a whole episode around what was going on in Unity's dream world with Desire. That would have just been really cool. And this is where I feel like the show dropped the ball in developing stories even further, especially because it's clear that Desire's out to get Dream and we don't 100% know why. The show also weekly introduced the idea that there are 3 nightmares and dreams who are unaccounted for in Dream's world. The Corinthian, who's the only one that I think got really great character development, and I just wish they hadn't got rid of him because he was the best character of the whole show. Fiddler's Green, who I think they could have done more with. And then Galt, who I think really got the short end of the stick here, even though they had the most compelling story to go with. Galt is a shape-shifting nightmare that wants to be a dream and gives Jed a way to escape from the reality of his abusive foster parents through this world that they've created in his dreams. I just really love this concept of how do these nightmares feel about the way that they've been created and what they've been designed for. And I think it goes so well with the themes of the show of that people can change and grow, and there's more nuance than just good and evil or nightmares and dreams. But she had like barely 10 minutes of screen time, if that. I just would have loved to see a whole episode around her story. There are also little Easter eggs from the comics sprinkled throughout the season that tease storylines that weren't quite featured in the show just yet. And while you could tell they meant something, and maybe super fans of the comic books were like, oh my god, yes, I'm so excited to see this, it did feel like it excluded new fans from really understanding what's going on. For instance, when they go to hell, they tease Nada from Seasons of Mist, but in a way that felt confusing unless you're gonna go do research to understand the connection. The season ends with Lucifer's return. She now wants revenge for the way that Dream defeated her earlier on in the season. And it felt like they were trying to make it this big cliffhanger reveal, but I didn't really care for this character of Lucifer, so it just felt anticlimactic to end on that. Maybe to see it ending with Desire revealing more why they're plotting against Dream would have been more impactful. And Timeless's Lucifer show was based on this version of Lucifer from Sandman. For some reason they decided not to bring him back to reprise his role, which I thought was actually a mistake. I think it could have worked, and I think it also would have made people connect with Lucifer more and would have made this ending feel bigger, especially because we already have background on him, we know him. I just felt like this Lucifer played by Gwendolyn Christie didn't add anything new or exciting to the show. When it comes down to it, I feel like the Sandman had so much potential, there were so many great elements, they were trying to discuss these really deep topics, but it just didn't fully come together in the long run. It's visually stunning, but it's also slow, uneven, drags out. I just wish it was more concise and tighter in its narrative direction, because you can see the glimmer of something really exciting there. I wanted them to develop the storylines and the characters even further, and it just felt like they didn't push the boundaries far enough. But I will say Boyd Holbrook and the Sound of Her Wings episode deserve major awards. They really did that. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Sandman series, especially how it compared to the comic books. Did you think this was a successful adaptation or not? Make sure to leave them in the comments below. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and if you want to talk more TV and movies with me outside of the comments section, check out the exclusive Discord available on my Patreon at patreon.com/kmaldo. If you like this one, you can check out more of my videos right over here. See ya!